Anything else for those minutes?
No, Bob, just to pick up on Neville's point, there was an apology for lateness. So I don't know whether he turned up or not. I thought he might have, but I can't remember.
For those minutes?
I'm happy to move with that that amendment if Neville was there.
Just to pick up on Neville's
Thanks,
point.
Nicole. I can't see you. There you are. Thanks, Nicole. Seconder for that, please.
So
give me a wave. Thank you, Jeremy.
Might have, but I can't remember.
All those in favour, please wave or say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I haven't got any supplementary reports or other things raised with me. 7 questions. Anybody?
I do.
And we'll move on to 8 then. Oh, sorry. I can't look at my papers and you at the same time. Sorry, Lloyd.
I do have a question, and it's regarding the Auditor General's recent ORC comments around declarations of interests and whether some of those interests exclude councillors. So my question is, what does it mean for Environment Southland? Is Environment Southland looking into this matter? And if so, when can we be updated? And the reason I ask this question is, 1, I am a multiple consent holder. 2, we're coming into an area where you could actually claim that because of my interest, I could have perceived views or leanings. And I want to make it totally clear, even though I've done all the, well, a number of councillors actually are the same position, but we've done all the declarations and paperwork, but we just want to make sure we're up to date and we're not causing either ES or ourselves any issues going forward.
Thanks, Lloyd. Rob or Vin, somebody want to take that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can answer this question for you.
Thanks, Vin.
As councillors may be aware, Otago Regional Council has sought applications for exemptions in the declaration for the Auditor General with respect to a number of councillors' interest pertaining to a plan change that was developed for to deal with the mining permits in Otago. Rob Phillips and myself have been in conversation with Philip Moore from Wynne Williams, who is reviewing councillors' interest declarations when the councillors commence this term, and will be preparing advice for council on whether any interests of concern are noted. The advice is likely to come through from preliminary advice, and then we may need further information to support further analysis down the track. In conversation with Mr. Moore, we anticipate receiving the preliminary advice prior to the next OPAC committee meeting, and it will be shared once received in the appropriate form.
Thanks, Vin. Nicole?
Yes, so just on that, I know that we've got RSC is a reasonably divided council, but when you get to the stage where they didn't have a quorum by the time they took everybody up with conflicts of interest, it is something that needs to be clarified. And in the past, the information we've had is that if your interest is no greater than the general public, you're not necessarily excluded. Having transparency about what people's interests are, of course, is important. So we'll watch with interest. But when I heard that from the chair that they didn't have a quorum after they took everybody out, I thought, well, that is probably taking things to extremes. So we'll watch this one with interest.
Yes, indeed, we will. Thanks, Nicole. Lloyd, are you satisfied with that answer? Thanks, Vin. We'll look forward to that because that will be very interesting indeed. Sorry, shuffling papers. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Item 8, the chairman and councillors' reports, please. Any of those? No, I can't find it, sorry. And item 9, the General Manager's Corporate Services Report. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you. So we'll head into the financial report, and Tanya will take us through that.
Sorry, I'm like Lyndall, I'm using 2 systems here. Apologies, I can, there we go, I can see you now. Okay, so 31st of March, it seems like a long time ago. We have covered quite a bit of this in a workshop on the 9th of April in terms of talking about our situation. On the 9th of April, we gave councillors our best estimate of where we would end up on the 31st of March and the end of the financial year. And I'm pleased to tell you that it isn't significantly different. So what I'd like to do is focus just on the, literally on the year to date and the year end, given we've only got 3 months to go. So I'll go through some, I know you've all had time to read it, but I'll go through some highlights and then take questions because it may appear a little bit confusing. If I start with other income, it is showing perhaps a small unfavourable variance, and you might wonder why that is given all the things that we're expecting to be down in income, which is our compliance. I'm looking at the forecast column, I'm sorry, let's look at that. We're expecting compliance fees, marine fees to be down, and yet we're showing only 141,000 unfavourable variance. And that is because during the year we've had additional income coming into biosecurity and quite a substantial contract there of 600,000. Our local contributions from our leasehold and our flood protection are higher. We made another 100,000 on the sale of our property, and our consents are up. So up and down, it's showing a small unfavourable variance. Needless to say, down in the costs, we have substantially more costs in consents and more costs in biosecurity, hence the reason the contractor's cost is up so much. So when we look at this on a gross basis, it's not that easy to discern exactly what is happening underneath, and that's why perhaps in the workshop we had on the budget, we went into a bit more detail there. So that's what's happening with other income. People are very much on track. We're showing a favourable variance towards the end of the year because, as we said, we are reducing our expenditure on travel and courses and conferences and any non-essentials in the period April to June. Contractors and consultants is significantly above, and we've been indicating that all the way through. Made up again, as I said, $600,000 of a biosecurity contract, which was a new contract for Mid-Dome. Substantial increase in expenditure and compliance and consents, meeting the increased number of consents that are going on and the technical nature of those, and some additional spend in the corporate area and leadership development programs and procurement policies and such. Those latter two being the smaller of the total change. Operational costs, a variety of smaller numbers. The larger one in there being drainage work tends to lag and looking like it's not going to be on budget again for the year. And then the extraordinary expenses from the flood. So if we look at our operating variance, it's showing 407,000 favourable for this month and 303,900 for the year to date, but a $2.47 million unfavourable variance forecast. If we subtract the flood expense, it's suggesting that our operating is 900,000 unfavourable in that operating area for all of the reasons I've just said. It's 900,000 across a total of 38 million. And then we go down into the external incomes, where you can see significant negatives at this point around income from investments. $2.5 million downturn in the month of March, which was pretty historic, and is now a lifetime ago. We're predicting a $2 million net unfavorable variance in investments, which means it's we had hoped to get 1.3, I think was our original budget from investments. The time this forecast was written, obviously we were still 800,000 behind, which you add 800,000 and 1.3 together means we're $2.1 million behind budget. The market is going up and down, as I had said last time we met. Currently we're $900,000 better than what's on the paper here. Could change, of course, by 30th of June. So at this point, and the point of writing this document, we have a forecast year-end deficit of $4.8 million. So I said 900,000 from operating deficit, greater than 900,000 operating deficit, greater than expected. A flood of 1.5 million that was unexpected, and a downturn in the investment portfolio, not expected. Just a quick look at the balance sheet. The trade receivables are showing $4 million, which is well above last year. We have an invoice there where we're waiting for a refund from MFE. That makes up a very large part of that, just under $2 million. The managed funds have reduced compared to last year because we did draw down that $7 million. Our trade payables are negative because we're showing it's an offset with the money we've got sitting on the balance sheet waiting for insurance claims. It's best part of $1 million or more sitting in that. If I look at the cash flow, you might have spotted purchase of property and plant, 2.4 million. That includes our purchase of a piece of land for the Waituna project, which was in the LTP. And if I just jump to the debtors page, there's a note there that we have completed our paperwork with Debt Management Central. We're working on early stages of how we can work with them given the current situation and what's best to happen there, given the sensitivities of where we're at. And at the time of writing, there was $344,000 of cruise ship income had been charged and was just a few days overdue from being paid. That has reduced slightly and it has been followed up. We've been assured that we are on the top of the list for payment. Before we go on to the next item, is there any questions, Chair?
Thanks, Tania. I've got Nicole at this stage. Anybody else? And Bruce and thanks.
Just a couple of questions, Tania. When we look at the contractors consultants, which is up about 2 million, what proportion of that would be to do with Riverworks? I'm assuming some of it is tied up with that. It's just, I've got another question, but I'll let you answer that one first.
3. Not so much, to be fair. We are trying to put that into that 1.5 million. So we've gone through and analysed this. There has been 300,000 spent or more on the YL, and we're moving that into that flood cost to try and keep it in one place. So not so much actually. It's as I said, 600,000 of it is the biosecurity contract alone. Consents and compliance. Consents the volume of work we're doing on consents and the technical nature of it means we're putting a lot out to contractors, and that has been sort of, I think, indicated for some time in the budget. Yeah, so, and after that's a combination of the other items that I mentioned.
So if I could just jump in there as well, just around in that consents area, noting that the aquaculture consents has mainly been outsourced because of the expertise needed, and also our resources in that planning space for our government court appeals, and also in the science space involves supporting the people, water, and land in the regional forum. So significant costs in those areas, consultants' costs.
And I guess the other question or comment, looking at that land purchase, it's something that probably not for today's meeting, but I would have thought that is something we could spread out, take out of some sort of loan, because the benefits are probably, over a generation or at least. But it doesn't help your balance sheet right now. But I guess it just prompts me that there are other ways of actually, handling that purchase.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks for that. Look, Tanya, thank you again for your report. I've probably got just very little quick questions just to check out. Some of them are just a wee bit sort of odd perhaps, but do we actually budget for rate penalties?
Yes, we do budget for rate penalties. Our rate penalties are ahead of budget this year, and that's why our rates are, I think, showing that.
Yeah, so perhaps that really raised the question. I should have gone back to previous reports, but does that actually mean that our rate debt is starting to increase?
No.
I looked at the report, but I mean, it just reflects, obviously, we were at this stage, the actual debtors report. Are they increasing? Why? I'm trying to understand why we've got increasing rate penalties.
I think our budgeting for rates penalties has been fairly conservative.
Yeah, right. Yeah, gotcha.
The total rates outstanding are not, as a percentage of the rates levied, are not any higher. I think it's just a reflection of perhaps our conservative nature. We don't want to over budget for rate penalties.
Okay. Don't let me drag that one out, Anya. Just again, we obviously thrashed a fair bit the contractors and consultants number. I was just looking at the forecast, and you put into the sort of the rationale of what will affect that spend through to 30 June as the New Zealand-wide lockdown. I didn't quite know whether that was a positive or a negative. Can you tell me in what way you think the lockdown will affect that spend?
Yeah, I'm not sure that rationale is completely able to explain what we're talking about either, to be fair.
Yeah.
It probably would have been better in the middle column, to be honest. I think my explanation is perhaps more appropriate. Yeah.
So effectively, the middle one about the bits which you've already talked about are influencing right through to the forecast rather than directly the lockdown. I had just wondered whether the lockdown was going to cause us to rely more on consultants in the final months or less. That's really what I was trying to get to there.
And I apologise. It probably affects more our other income. Part of the cruise ships is also the fact
gotcha. No,
doing the compliance work. Yeah,
understand that. Look, and I take it the savings that are apparent in the operational spend, where approximately $600,000 favourable there, if I can call it that. But if I go to the year-to-date explanation, contracts not yet completed, presumably that spend is going to occur. Obviously not this year, but presumably next year we've got commitments that we have to meet.
It tends to be year-end, the underspend in operational areas tends to be in the catchment area, and it's to do with they tell us the 3-year cycle of work that they have So we've noted it as contracts not complete at the 31st of March. I'm suggesting at the end, there's no explanation for the year end, but I'm suggesting there that there will be, given the amount of work that Catchment are doing currently on the flood work, and looking at their spend on the drainage, that we're anticipating an underspend in the drainage area again. And it's not all of that 100,000, but it's the rest of it is a multitude of smaller items.
Mm. Yeah, so in the contract, sorry, in the catchment area, it's not that these are necessarily contracts started but not completed, but they're actually contracts not yet commissioned, will be in the new year, and presumably for which effectively the money's already been rated.
At March, not completed means, you know, drainage work plan not done. At the end of the year, it means we've possibly rated for it, as you say, on a 3-year cycle. So this is something that's become more apparent in the last couple of years of the land drainage, the cycling of the work. Low, low, high is how they tell us. But yeah. Okay,
no, that's fine. I'm no big drama. Look, I was just interested, and perhaps it's even partly done by Nicole's comments. We've obviously taken a chunk out of our managed funds for cash flow purposes. Essentially, it means we've probably in effect crystallised the losses that have been apparent in the managed funds. Correct? I mean, we've had to take the money out at a low point.
Actually not.
No, Neil's trying to. I'm just trying to understand what would we have taken out. You know, well, we're going to take out 7.5, right? Haven't we in effect crystallised the losses at this point?
No, I'd like to correct that. We signalled back in December what our cash flow needs were for the year.
Yeah.
That was $5 million with the which included the property purchase, and Nicole was correct that can be funded in the future on a long-term basis. So when we added the cost of the floods, our forecast through to November, which was when we received most of our money, was we would need $7 million. That was signalled again to JB Weir in early February, and they had the opportunity to use the balanced portfolio. They moved $1 million out of equities into cash, and pretty much ahead of the worst of the share market crash. To be fair, this was done in early March.
Yeah.
So if we look at the current portfolio and add back the $7 million, we're actually sitting ahead of the opening balance on the 1st of July 2019. So it's the 31st of March reports are showing the worst of the market values. As I said, they've come back up 900,000. So no, we're not going to have $1.3 million of income, but we're not showing substantial capital loss either.
If I get it right, what you're effectively saying is because of our cash flow forecasts, JB Weir moved the money from investments ready for payment or into our bank account in advance of the substantial loss of the last month. So in fact, my question about them being crystallised actually isn't true. It would be now if we were to take the money out, but in effect, we got it at the right time.
Yeah, if I can just add to it. So yeah, we got it ahead of time, but it was, they moved it progressively out of different investments into their cash holdings. So I just,
that's what I got.
At the end of March, we've taken 6.5 across, not the 7 across. So there's still 500K that come across in April. But essentially, you know, fortunately, our timing was pretty good. We actually prevented some of the possible fallout of the COVID-19 adjustment.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. That's you're right. It's all about timing, and so well done. That should be pat on the back to people to get some forecasts going right and actually pulling the money out at the right time. I was just wondering, you know, in this coming environment where in fact the managed funds have taken a hit given the relative cheap value of money, debt,
Thanks, Bruce. Lloyd, your turn, and then Alan.
Thanks for that. Yeah, most of my questions have been answered, but I think the issue that I see that Bruce is raising is the need to go into our fund to help cash flow. So we'll pick that up later, but the points that I wanted to raise have been raised.
Thanks, that's excellent. All right, Alan, your turn.
Yes, I'm just looking at the aged debtors report, and obviously we've got a reasonable portion sitting in over 3 months. We're 10 months into the financial year, obviously 2 months to go. At what point are you going to review those overdues, those 90-day plus debts, to establish whether the current doubtful debt provision of 260,000 is adequate to cover what's sitting in that 90-day plus?
Sorry, Councillor, we're talking about rates or the debtors? And
well, you've got 3 reasonably chunky numbers there in all categories: rates, debtors, and prosecutions accruals.
Yes, well, the prosecutions accruals, we cannot, we are assured of payment from the court. The rates are I'll answer the question succinctly. We go through that list very carefully because we're trying to operate with those people all of the time to ensure that they move out of the 3-month category. We have as it says there, 260,000 provision. Most of that is actually provisioned against rates. Some 100,000 potentially is on sundry debtors. And we are very thorough with our analysis. Do we expect more? I think the next 4 weeks will tell us, to be honest, as we work through what's happening at the moment.
You'll have worked through with when the accounts were audited last year as to obviously what balances the provision was against, and whether some of those numbers or some of those entities are still there. They will be more inclined to wish the provision to be higher.
Yes, many of them are under management though. We're doing our best to not write off debt, to always take the position that we are due to be paid, and we do expect to be paid, and sometimes it takes a bit longer. And with working with Debt Management Central, we do hope to strengthen our case and to be able to do it more efficiently.
Neil, did you want to comment on that, or did you have something else?
So just a question actually with Tanya. You commented when you were talking about the balance sheet that there was the MFE recovery of the Waituna activity, that some of that was invoiced. So is that sitting, where is that sitting in that debtors statement? Like, is that a chunky item that's sort of sitting in there somewhere where we are assured of payment?
Yeah, to be fair, it's not totally honest where it's sitting. Not honest, not obvious is the word I'm looking for. It is $1.8 million. So I cannot see it in the analysis, which is not a very good answer, is it? But yeah, we're expecting that in the next few weeks. So
yeah. So the upshot is if we look at the balance sheet, because there may be some details not represented correctly on that detailed sheet, but in the balance sheet we have currently 4.1 mil of debtors, of which 1.8, circa 1.8, we're guaranteed because it's just going to be a reclaiming of funds from MFE. So that takes us down to about 2.3, which is reasonably consistent with the prior year. So I don't think we've got, am I right in those statements, Tanya? I don't think we've got any significant overruns of debtors at the present point in time.
No, I agree with you. I have to apologise. I wasn't in, and I haven't checked this analysis when it was published for me on my behalf, but we are on a normal trajectory with debtors. We've discussed the cruise ship debtors, they're sitting still only in the 1 month, because they're only within that 1 month of being overdue. They're in fact still within a week of being overdue. And we have some other normal debtors sitting in the 3 months, but this is not as I would have expected it to be fair, this analysis.
Yeah, there's some misrepresentation because it's stating 760k of rates current, which obviously is not right. So apologies all for that's the way that's presented. But as I say, if we look at the balance sheet, our total, I guess, typical debtors is about 2.3 million. So we're reasonably consistent with prior years.
I'll leave it at that then. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. Nicole, did you still want to speak?
Just probably by way of explanation, I'm assuming the 1.8 we're expecting from MFE, just for some of the others, is the lag for payment for Waituna land. Could you confirm that, Neil?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Anybody else on that item? We have a mover, please.
I'll move.
Thank you, Lloyd. Seconded by Councillor Beard. All those in favour, please raise a hand. Just before we move on to the next item, I just need to remind everybody that I've got 2 teenagers in class, which is online. So if I freeze or I disappear, that's why. So item 2 is the investment report. Tanya, is that you again?
Thank you. I think we've discussed quite a bit of the effect of this, as Neil said. As at the 31st of March, 6.5 million was drawn down. A further $500,000 has been received in early April. The balance today is 27.4, as opposed to what we're seeing here, which was 26.5. The equity split today, given that the equities have increased since this report, including property shares, we have 51% sitting in equities or market-related assets, and the balance 49% in bonds and cash. Now, this is a result of our drawdown and then the somewhat strengthening of the equity market. If you remember, we spoke to JB Weir, I think, the 19th of March at one of our workshops, and equities were sitting underweighted, they said closer to 40%. So the rise, the $900,000 rise increase in the portfolio value has, of course, increased the weighting in equities. We do have, in some subsequent workshops, some discussions around investment strategy and funding, and of course the funding of the next year's annual plan and the any further flood damage will affect what we wish to draw down from the portfolio, and will then impact on our weightings as we look to draw more funds out. We will have to rationalise some of these equity market related positions. So it gives us some food for thought as we move ahead. I think the rest of the report is reasonably self-explanatory, particularly the graph at the end. Commentary, positive commentary in April. This commentary was mixed. I think JB Weir is still cautious. Nobody really knows where the market's going. It's a 50-50 bet as whether it's going to go up or down.
I've got Councillor McCallum. Anybody else got want to put their hand up? Thanks.
Tanya, you're a little bit hard to hear, but you're quite softly spoken. So If you could just speak up a little bit, it'd be much appreciated. I'm looking on the page, which one is it? Page 20, and it's got the cash and portfolio investment held the 31st of March. Could you explain to me where the 6.5 million comes out of that? Because it looks like to me it's a revaluation of 900 or 9 million. I'm not clear how that's moved in that February-March period.
Okay, so is that a little bit better? I've turned my volume up on the.
That's great. Yep.
Cool. Thank you. If we look at the income assets, where we describe bonds, New Zealand bonds and cash, we've moved $6 million out. So there was a reduction in offshore bonds of 1.1, New Zealand bonds 1.3, and cash 3.3. So $6 million of cash there was, well, effectively withdrawn. The equities show, the Australian and New Zealand equities just simply show a devaluation because we didn't draw, or certainly I don't remember them taking any money out of those two portfolios. We moved $1 million, or the best part of it, out of the offshore equities into cash. Property is a devaluation and a market devaluation. So in summary, the offshore equities, we took out $1 million of cash, and the balance was the devaluation of the market. There was a change in offshore bonds, moved negatively, which is unusual. It should have moved positively with the reduction in interest rates. They actually moved negatively because of the risks. It was the craziest time ever in March with all the markets. They acted perversely. If you expected the one to go up, like you would have expected the bonds to go up, it didn't happen. So there was some market loss actually in the offshore bonds, and then when I say some, I think from memory it was about 400,000, and the balance is us removing the cash. So of the $9 million there, 6.5 came out as cash and 2.5 came out as a market loss at that time, at the 31st of March.
Do you, just a suggestion, do you think because we've got two things happening there at once, that a note down the bottom, explanatory note, might help that reading of that? Because it doesn't actually read as you have explained now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It doesn't. The report comes from JB Weir like that, and we didn't split it out. So we can, hopefully we don't see that situation again.
Yeah, it would be helpful, because when I went through it, I looked and thought, I didn't actually see the physical money going out, which I knew happened, and it reads as if it's just been a revaluation. So that's what I wanted to say, really.
Yeah.
Anything else, folks? Nicole?
You're just on that, looking at the graph on page 20 on the offshore bonds. Is that explanation why we appeared to be, well below the benchmark? We were sort of, no, I'm looking the wrong way around. It was the negative, the actual and the benchmark. Was that affected by the drawdown, or was it?
I would expect not. As I said, the markets were quite perverse in the offshore bonds, and yes, there was a definite drop in value. I'm not sure why the benchmark is substantially different to our portfolio. I would have thought our portfolio would have been fairly indicative of an overall portfolio. So that would be a good question for JB Weir, as to how did the benchmark perform so much better than our portfolio in that area. But they do give us these numbers, so I trust that they've made those calculations correctly.
No, it's just interesting. It just seems a bit perverse because, as you say, there's not a lot of difference between the different bonds. I wouldn't have thought. It just something that stuck out, but yeah, obviously a question for them rather than for you. So.
Worth noting that though, so that we don't forget to ask. Jeremy.
Yeah, just a quick one. Just in regards to, did you say with April has been a bit more positive? Have you just to clarify that? Was it the 900 grand or thereabouts? Is that right, Tony? So are we indicating that if that stayed there till March on 30th of April, that we'd be looking at another increase, like it's gone up, I don't know, 3% or something like that, on just on the rolling 12 month? If, you know, it's going up and down, but I just wanted to know as of today roughly.
I haven't calculated that percentage.
No, I'm just guessing in my head. I'm just working on 26 million up 3%, 750,000, you know, 900 some.
Yes, it's correct. It's incredibly volatile.
Yeah.
But we have moved, as I say, 0.9 in this month. JB Weir were very quick to send us a report mid-month, setting out the improvements in the month.
Yeah, it's just that like we've got a 2.64 going to drop off the other end. I'm just trying to look for the 12-month rolling. So it's saying we won't go down. I'm just saying it could change tomorrow if Trump decides to say something silly again. So I'm just getting a bit of as up to date as we can. But no, it's all right, all good.
I'd just like to reiterate what I said in the workshop, is that the New Zealand equities have held up reasonably well, maybe perversely well, given what we don't know is going to happen in our economy. The Australian portfolio was hammered quite substantially, has come back as a result of increased market sentiment and the exchange rate moving more in our favour. Not in our favour, but in the favour of the value of the portfolio. So it's the benefit of a diverse portfolio is you have two different exchange rates and three economies, but still very much waiting. I think everybody's waiting. We don't understand what this means to the future earnings of the companies that we're invested in. We think we do. We asked JB Weir to tell us what that means, but and like the rest of us, they're waiting really to see, like the whole market seems to be waiting. We don't understand what this means. So at the moment, positive.
Thanks, Tanya. If there's no more questions, could we have somebody move that we note that report, please? Thank you, Councillor Cook, and seconded by Councillor McPhail. All those in favour, please raise a hand. Thank you.
You're on mute, Lyndall.
Oh, sorry, I've got my hand on the spacebar. Item 3, thanks, Amy.
Morning, everybody. Here we are again in slightly unusual circumstances to how we found ourselves last time, discussing things that seem a world away from where we were about a month ago. So the report for health and safety is for last quarter, and clearly will have a significant, does have a significant COVID focus. Prior to lockdown, as I said, you know, the focus was on making sure that whilst COVID was coming, we were looking after the health and safety of our employees in the workplace. And then with a very short space of time, we had to get them working from home and set up effectively to work from there. Since this report, in the last couple of weeks, we have done a remote wellbeing survey with reference to the item covered in 1A. We've got a 76% participation rate for that, and a really good score, 75%, which means the majority of people agreed that their wellbeing was good. They've been responding positively to working remotely, and also positively about how we've supported their well-being during this time. highest score in that survey was on leadership, which was encouraging, and how we've supported through management our people to be able to work remotely. They feel trusted, they know what's expected, and that our working relationships with them feel good and positive. You know, trust is huge working in a remote environment. The next highest score was on their psychological well-being. People feel confident to ask questions. They're being checked in on by their managers, and well-being's talked about. They've really responded well to the fact that we have really ramped up our communication to people and made sure that we're providing information and updates to them. As you will know and appreciate, when you're isolated in your bubble, if you can't get out and about and talk to people in the corridor and just access information in the ways that you normally would, having that information driven from the centre more actively is really, really important. Rob's been doing a video every morning for staff, and that has been a real hit. And the staff have appreciated the updates and the support that they're getting. That said, staff are also telling us that they're not enjoying working from home, and I'm sure that we would all share aspects of that sentiment. I'm sure wrapped up in that is just coping with change and acknowledging that we as human beings are social animals, and so the current circumstances are somewhat unusual for us. And they're also telling us that they have concerns about financial security, and you know, much has been made of what is happening in the wider economy, and I was seeing that in the news as well. But we are doing as well as can be expected under the circumstances, and certainly the move to level 3 this week has meant that we're being able to progress more of our field work. There has been activity going on, making sure that our health and safety plans are in place to ensure that people can continue to do field work safely as they normally would, but also with the COVID-19 lens on top of that. As part of supporting that, I go to item 1B. We have activated our driver buddy from eRoads, so we know where people are in their vehicles, and there have been some draft protocols going out with that as well. It's probably, I mean, the report sort of stands as is. Are there any particular questions that anybody has in relation to any of the incidents reported from the last quarter, or any indeed in relation to any of the COVID-19 activity that's going on at the moment?
I've had indications from Lloyd, Neville and Bruce.
Cool.
Lloyd?
Thanks, Lyndall. I was interested in 1B. What did you find when you turned them on? Did you find things that you didn't expect, or was it as you expected? And how did staff find the follow-up from those conversations?
Oh, it's literally just been turned on now. And Neil, I think you've got any comments that you want to make about that?
Yeah, there's two parts to it, Lloyd. We, as soon as we went into lockdown, we turned them on so that we as management could see who was moving and understand who was out in the field. Only as of this morning have we turned on the in-car device so that people get that feedback. That said, I can say as a pilot, I turned mine on about a week beforehand just so I understood how it worked. It's actually really quite really good. It gives you that instant feedback. You know if you're exceeding the speed limit, and dare I say it, if you exceed the speed limit by 10 kilometers per hour, you'll get a notification that will ding at you. But it is all about changing behavior and giving people instant feedback. And when you park up, you get a score about how you performed in terms of whether you had any speeding infringements, if you had any sharp braking, sharp acceleration or whatever. And you know, the vendors, E-Road, they talk about gamification of it, and it is trying to, you know, get a good score and you know, beat your peers. And I'm happy to say that I'm currently leading the leaderboard, so you know.
Are you the only one on the board?
Maybe. but I intend to hold that position.
I know others have used it, and some find it somewhat difficult, and others find it extremely helpful. So my next question, if I may, Madam Chair, is I see there's 4 vehicle near misses, one using a cell phone and one person parked illegally near the office. You want to comment on those two?
Yeah, well, you know, neither are ideal, clearly, and the individuals concerned were spoken to in relation to using the phone while driving. That was someone who was, they're actually looking to locate a property. So rather than pull over and check the map, they were crawling along the side of the road, checking to see whether they got the right property that they were supposed to be visiting. So yeah, the whole team's been spoken to about that, and the individual concerned. Yes, and illegal parking near the office. Not on, we have ongoing issues with our neighbours, generally speaking, and of course that corner from Price Street onto North Road is a difficult one, particularly for making right-hand turns. So we're really keen to make sure that A, we're doing the right thing, and B, we're also being good neighbours.
Thank you.
Neville? Need you to unmute yourself, Neville.
Hey, how's that? Got me? Yeah, just anecdotal commentary about people working from home. I'm associated with other groups, and particularly the managers are finding it difficult being online all day, all the time. It's really, there's 2 people have told me they find it really, really tiring. So, yeah, if you're having Zoom meetings and constantly trying to keep in contact with people over the internet, then tiredness builds up over the day.
Absolutely. Look, there is I guess all aspects of mental health is going to be long haul for us to manage, and there are, I guess, unexpected consequences, as you rightly point out, of working the way that we do. We have ongoing campaigns of how people can manage mental health. We've issued lots of guidance to make sure that people are doing the right thing, and you know, and practicing self-care and clocking in, like the ability to exercise and demonstrate compassion for people and their experience of how they're working and what they're experiencing is really important. And it is exhausting. It is exhausting being constantly online. It's very, very intense. And we're encouraging people to make sure that they still take their breaks and create some separation between work and home. And we've been talking to people very much about outputs as opposed to you know, doing hours, working long hours. We recognise that some people have children at home, so actually, you know, managing schoolwork and being a pseudo teacher and managing your own workloads as well, and then, you know, stepping into the kitchen to make dinner and do the hoovering or whatever it is. You know, those are all challenges that people are dealing with all at the same time, and we need to just be compassionate and make sure that our people remain well, because we want them to be well when, you know, we eventually get back into the workplace as well. So we've got various campaigns and information on, and like we said, you know, our managers are doing a really good job of keeping in touch with people, making sure that we identify the people who need a bit more welfare support or care in the community. Our Tui Hill, who is our employee assistance person, is really active with us. We're keeping her Wednesday slot, but she's also making sure that she's available outside of times to talk to people, and we make sure that we're really well connected in the employee assistance space.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. It is being online all day is really hard work. So well done to those people who are managing to do that. Bruce, you had a question.
Yeah, look, just probably three for a quick comment, please, Amy. One, I just was interested in your comment about staff feeling stress, particularly financial stress. I can understand that in a generalised sense for a lot of businesses. Is there particular risk for staff employed by Environment Southland over the normal issue around stress? The second thing is actually about, and probably Lloyd and I could go through all the incidents, but the slow vehicle reversing into a person actually doesn't sound like a near miss, it sounds like a hit. That is actually stress. Look, the third thing is obviously, I think I've probably asked before, when do things like Safe Plus occur? So I'm very interested that you're about to rework the manual, which is great, and obviously Michelle's got some time boundedness around that, which is superb too. I was just interested in the second last bullet point, which obviously is not unnaturally a crossover into people and capability. The inclusion of a system to assess competence to ensure any training undertaken delivers the skills required. I take it that's actually, well, actually I just would like a bit of explanation as to what that is. Thanks. There's three questions, sorry.
Sure, Bruce, you broke up on the second one, so I didn't quite get what the question was. Say if we were talking about the slow vehicle, and was that a hit as opposed to a near miss, but what was the specific question that you asked? Sorry.
Oh, look, sorry. So with the I think the second question was the near miss, right? And it was just, well, was the question, is it actually an event and actually a hit, as in contrast to a near miss, which means in terms of seriousness, it is higher up the scale than actually a near miss. Near miss, good learning experience, but actually backing into somebody is an event. And I'm just wondering what you can expand happened around that.
Sure. Okay, I'll take them in turn. So firstly, is stress any more of an issue for ES staff over and above anybody else at this time? Actually, I don't think so. I think what we're seeing there is our staff are seeing what's going on in the wider economy. We're also, it's also budget time, and we're also having conversations about that. People, not just as individual staff members, but they're part of family units as well, and there's things going on in those family units depending on where partners and family members are working. So I think it's very normal it's unfortunate, but it's very normal for people to be feeling insecure at this time. They will be worried about the future, and there's no, I guess, certainty about what the way forwards is for people, generally speaking, in terms of how the world is. We are looking at, like I said, we've got mental health campaign going, and we're looking to see what support and advice we can provide for people around financial planning, budgeting, those sorts of things, to support them around some of their concerns. And we're continuing to pay people. So we're doing as much as we can. We can't be making blanket guarantees to anybody about anything going forwards. We are also looking at how the world is changing and what we need to do to be able to continue to deliver our services to the community. And then, in terms of stress per se, like I said, we have support for people around mental well-being, resilience tools to help them manage those things and that information. We started providing that last year, and we have continued to provide that and make sure that that's front and centre of a lot of our communications to staff. In terms of the slow vehicle, that was a contractor backing a boat, and in fact they were moving so slowly that the person who was standing there didn't even realise it was moving, and the driver didn't even realise they'd touched the person till well after. I don't think it was a collision per se, it was more a brush against something, but I take your point. Should we have recorded that as not an EMS?
Just for a point of clarification, Amy, Bruce, it is registered there as a vehicle incident, not as an EMS. So we had 4 near misses, but there were 2 incidents. One is that the backing into someone, the other one was sparks from a vehicle.
Yeah, look, Neil, I think my point is, and look, it's all got to be based around the seriousness and the gravity of the situation. And look, I take your point about the categorisation. All I'm trying to say is it was an actual incident, as you quite rightly pointed out, Neil. Presumably it has a different response to that of a near miss.
I think you made the point earlier on, any incident, whether it's a near miss or whether it's a slight hit, all of them get investigated, and we try to take the learnings out of them to factor back into our health and safety system. So take your point.
Yeah. And we did that in that case. It was about making sure that if you are backing and you do have blind spots, that you have a spotter within the area to help reverse, and just ongoing comms with people about taking care in the car park if you are a pedestrian as well. And then in terms of Safe Plus and that system to assess competence, that has specifically come from our driver training. So we send people on 4-wheel drive training before they go out and use our vehicles, but actually we don't assess how competent they are before we then let them drive the vehicles, and that's a gap in our practice, and it's one that we need to address, because it also relates to people's not just competence but also confidence to undertake the activities that we're asking them to undertake, and so that's an area where we need to improve our practice.
Thanks for those good explanations, Amy. Does that answer everything for you, Bruce? Great. Anything else there? I'm conscious of time because we've got till 10:30 and it's now 10:05. And we've just talked about being online for too long, so I'm sure everybody's going to need a cup of tea and a toilet break before we start again at 10:30.
I'll move that, Madam Chair.
Can I just raise a question really on just one point at the back end of that report?
Yep.
So I just had to clarify, is Michelle Carter an employee of Environment Southland, or is her title Health and Safety and Wellness Business Partner, Environment Southland? So what's her capacity?
So she's a full-time member of my team. Yeah, she's employed internally to guide us, lead us in all things health and safety in the organisation.
So her Wellness Business Partner is just a title of expandedness?
Yep.
A wordy title. I'm going to make one up.
Yeah.
So we've had that. Sorry, Ellen, is that everything?
Well, just then I wanted to just question, when she puts forward, I recommend a complete rewrite, who then approved that recommendation? If it has been recommended, if it has been approved?
It's that would be me. So she would do that as this would be part of normal HR, people and capability, health and safety. So she has the expertise to suggest this to us, and actually what we want to make sure is that we have a health and safety manual that is practical and easy to use. So that would be part of our normal internal operational work.
So having started the role she's picking up on what you had and then looking to modify, upgrade.
Yep, absolutely. You know, we've been talking for a while now about not just in health and safety, but within the organisation, you know, adopting a practice of continuous improvement. And it's really important, you know, particularly I'd argue in health and safety where, you know, there are perhaps higher risks in other areas in the organisation, that we make sure that our practices are fit for purpose and they enable us to manage our risks. But it's also good practice as an organisation, generally speaking, to be questioning what we're doing and seeing if there are ways that we can do things more efficiently or effectively or appropriately.
So would she only focus on internal issues for Environment Southland, or would she ever look outside the organisation?
She has a lens externally from the point of view of the work that we do with our contractors, and she works with our managers and with our broader employees when they're dealing with contractors, because we have a joint responsibility as PCBUs when we're doing joint work. So she would work in an outward-facing capacity, but not for other external bodies, if you like. She's our representative in that regard.
Yeah, just her visibility in a comms basis or the like, if there was commentary that was valuable to be made on a wider audience or to a wider audience, would she have a comment?
Can you give
I'm
me
just saying whether there's any way you can extract more value out of an employee as such in the HR area. Obviously, there's certainly with 180 employees, a significant body of staff to be focused on. But I guess also in light of everything we've got to consider now, you know, is she valuable in other parts of what we do as council?
Do you have an example, Alan? I'm not sure I understand.
No, I'm just sowing a seed. That's all. Whether there is any way that we can use her in an external way, just certainly in comms and any of our, you know, reporting for what we do as a council.
Oh, look, you know, we're always happy to provide advice and guidance and support. You know, we work across the organisation in our team, so, you know, and we're always, you know, happy to help. So if there are specific asks or if guidance is being sought, you know, we're happy to come to the party and help out.
Yeah, and can I, through your chair, can I add just to Amy's comments as well? You know, it is part of the year story around our health and safety, and so certainly, you know, we'll be talking about it in the public arena around as part of what we're doing. You know, the health and safety component, and especially not just through this COVID period, but you know, this is a good example, and how we're moving into level 3, sort of putting health and safety at the forefront. So yes, I think that's what you're getting at. I think, Alan, around how do we make sure that story's been told. So yeah, that's something we can certainly do.
Yeah, again, like we are the Southland Regional Council, so how do we also externally help the region by any commentary? And again, it just doesn't mean to say every time we have to write something about HR, but I mean, we put out our quarterly magazine or publication, and yeah, I think that's been said.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alan. And something just to keep in the back of our minds the whole time, actually. So we have Councillor McCallum has moved that we received that report. Have we got a seconder? Thanks, Mr. Robertson. All those in favour, please raise a hand. Thank you. Carried. Sorry, finding the right page now. The annual activity plan, please, Neil.
Yep, so just quickly, just an update, a bit of confession, the policy work that's on the plan hasn't been done at this present point in time. The staff involved have been caught up in insurance, or the staff to do the work have been caught up in insurance claims and in COVID response activity. I have spoken to the chair and assured her that this will get done prior to the end of the year, because if you recall, they were policies that were identified as shortcomings by the auditors, so we need to resolve that So hence they've been kept on the list and highlighted or bolded. And the other item, that addition that I made to the list prior to last time, is I've included insurance claim update. We did have a conversation at the last OPAC meeting about the complexities associated with our insurance claiming and the different parties that are involved, being Aon and NEMA, and the fact that they take different approaches. So what I'm proposing is that we put a paper up to OPAC just explaining that and talking about, or clarifying where we're at and how that affects our, I suppose, integrates into our reserve and necessary reserve holdings, and how all that sort of holds together. So propose bringing that back to council at the next OPAC meeting. The other item, and the chair and I had a meeting, and we came up with the concept that at the bottom of this activity plan is that we bring through any to-dos that came up out of any previous meetings. It's just important, I guess. We have our meetings, and there are some action items that come out of them, and we discussed that. Look, at the bottom of that table, we will just put a to-do list up so that we keep track of that and we don't lose sight of anything that comes out of previous meetings. And I guess, you know, that's about holding us to account that we do complete the work that, or the items that were raised by council. So yeah, if there's any questions or comments, I'm happy to take them.
Anybody? Councillor McCallum.
Neil, I'm going back to the first paper effectively, but there seems to be quite a time delay between reporting the end of month and actually reporting to this committee. I presume that there is an understanding that even though we're only a few days into each month, we'll have at least a draft of what our position will be. I make that comment because of the forecasting going forward. It is quite vulnerable or flexible, or has a lot of ups and downs, but we really need to know what our end position is so we can go forward to the annual plan as well. So some of that, while it's normally in the auditor for a couple of 3 months, we actually need to have a little bit better visibility on that.
Yeah, I think we have worked to follow up on the discussion that we had at our OPAC workshop back in December, and you'll recall we had discussion about actually separating the OPAC meetings, one being financial, the other one being financial focused and risk focused. I think in order to move to that position, we need to do the work, in terms of staff needs to do the work of what that quarterly report looks like, and get council approval on that. And I guess with that, Lloyd, is then conversations around timing expectations and aligning our OPAC meeting cycle around our financial reporting cycle. So at the moment we are, you know, entrenched in this 6-weekly meeting, which doesn't necessarily align very well with what a financial reporting cycle is. So I agree with you. I think we've got some, as staff, we've got some groundwork to do before we are able to change that activity plan to then have that, you know, quarterly financial reporting, quarterly risk reporting, and then maybe, you know, in discussion with councillors, change the timing of when we have our meetings so they better align around financial reporting.
Lloyd, does that cover off that for you?
Yeah, we're on the same page. It's just a matter of how soon can we do it, and can we get, if it's not fully done, can we get something through so that we start off next year? It's going to be a lot of monitoring next year to make sure we're doing what we said we're going to do. So we just need to move that forward, really. So I agree with Neil in the direction. It's just a matter of how fast we can get there.
Yep.
Happy to remove the recommendation, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chairman Horrell. Seconder. Thank you, Mr. Robertson. All those in favour, all those in favour, please raise a hand. Must be time for a cup of tea. Thank you, carried. which brings us to the fact that there is I haven't been notified of any extraordinary and urgent business, and therefore we need to move into public excluded. Mel, are you there with the reasons for needing to move into excluded, please?
Yes, I am. It would be for confirmation of minutes for the 19th of March. And items 5 to item 7, reasons for passing the resolution would be to prevent disclosure or use of official information for improper gain or advantage, to protect the privacy of natural persons, including that of deceased or natural persons, and to carry on without prejudice or disadvantage negotiations, including commercial and industrial negotiations.
Thank you.
Happy to move, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chairman Horrell. Seconded, Councillor McPhail. All those people in favour, raise a hand. Thank you, carried. All, we will move into, oh, sorry, anybody against? Thank you. So the first item on that